Hey guys, I just wanted to do this, I guess, review of the VRM from Victron Energy. This year I've gotten this new component to, I guess, my electrical and power systems in the boat, and I'm really appreciative. Actually, the more that I'm learning how to use it, the better it is. So. Some of the things that I've been able to do with it, just specifically aside from monitoring, is a little bit of post-review analysis of what's actually going on with my power. The vrm.victronenergy.com is where your Serbo GX actually uploads some information to their servers. And what it does is that it gives you the ability to take a look at the data over time. Whereas when you're on the boat, it can only retain a limited amount of information for as long as you have the app, the Bluetooth app open or something like that. So in the site, there's kind of like a couple sections that are very useful. Kind of on the left-hand side here, you can see there's a menu. So there's an advanced section and the dashboard, which is what I'm going to take a look at here today. You can even use this to do two-way programming with your equipment. So for example, the Quattro, you can actually push the configuration through the VRM tool into an app that's running on your laptop that then pushes out to the device itself for programming. So there's a little bit of two-way, but I'm just going to talk about the feed, so the one-way. So basically, the Serbo GX is connected to my LTE internet router, and then from there it pushes the data out to the servers and it gets recorded here. So up in the dashboard section here, you can see there's two sections. There's historical data, and then there's the current, like what's going on. So this little part here shows you that it's when was it last updated, so you can see it's doing real time right now. So right this second, I've got 910 watts coming in on my AC, and my inverter is inverting. I've got no AC input. And you can see I've got 0 watts in there all day. I've had no generator input, so I don't have anything connected to either my AC or my generator input connections right now. It's discharging, so it shows kind of like, well, what's it been doing here all day? And then on the DC power, it shows you that this is my current DC loads, and it's getting this from my Bluetooth shunt. And basically every one of these little spikes here, because I wasn't on the boat today, is my fridge. So I can kind of see like when does my fridge kick in, and as the day, the night is progressing, I can see when does it happen, and that's about it. So right now it's generating 16 watts power, and then my charger, this is the other part, right now it's generating 0, and it's in the state of off, but you can see that I had a huge spike here today, and it did 329 watts of power, and then a little bit of wattage here this afternoon. So you can kind of see the time. So basically my peak was at 10, and I had already recharged my battery from the night. And this sort of like to take a look at the historical data down below. I've got it set here to the last 2 days. And you can change this to be whatever configuration that you want. But over here, this is yesterday, so the power went all the way down to, looks like a minimum of 88%. And then it went up as my solar kicked in. And you can see I charged it, and I was back up to 100%. And this is going down slowly over the night. Down to only 95%. And what I did differently last night, I did this as a test, was I turned off my Quattro. So the pink here represents the consumed power. So between 2300 and 2359, so over that 1 hour period, I consumed 0.05 kilowatt hours of consumption. Whereas last night at the same time, 2300, I consumed 0.02. So it looks like I've got 0.03 kilowatts of energy being consumed by just the Quattro. So just to turn it on, its idle voltage leaking is 0.03 kilowatts per hour. So because of that, you can see that I hit 88%, whereas last night I hit 95% by turning that off. So if I make a general practice while I'm cruising to turn off the Quattro at night, then I'll consume a lot less power. So you can see it's actually, I got down to 96% as opposed to 88. So that's, what is that, 8, 9, 10, 6, 8. So it's 8% of my battery was lost overnight because of the Quattro. So that's why it's an interesting, I really do appreciate this information. And then you can kind of go back if you want to look at the last, say, 7 days, and it'll give you kind of a really big overview. So starting on the 3rd of September, it started to rain. We had a storm come in, so it rained for almost 2.5 days. And then finally, you can see here, I consumed, or my my solar controller, MPPT controller, actually produced 3.65 kilowatts, even though I consumed only 1.6. It was making up for the other days. So I got as low as 51% here, as you can see, and then I got back up to 100% on that day of charging on the 6th of September. The day before I was at 59, I was at 74, 79, I'm looking at my minimums here, 87, 83. So this is sort of like where I would normally be sitting at any given time, but this was a storm that took 2.5 days. So I dropped a pretty significant amount. I'm usually around 87, 85%, and I back up to 100, as you can see. The range here says 87% to 200%. And if I change this back for the last 30 days, you can kind of see that, you know, whenever there's a storm, I drop down a bit, 58%, 63%, 75%, the lowest being 51% here. And but that's because you can see I didn't have any charging at all, barely any charging. So I consumed a significant amount. Most days, though, you can see I get back up to 100 with when I'm using it, and then the pink here being what I consumed. You can see, like, this is when I'm out motoring or sailing, you know, or on the boat. Typically, I use more on those days, whereas these days here, you can see I haven't been on the boat this week. We had some birthdays and family over and things, so I was not out there doing my regular sailing and motoring around. So another thing that's interesting, it gives you a little bit of how much goes back to the grid. So you can actually configure your Quattro to send power back to the grid. You have to have like an ID and a contract with the government to be able to do that. But in a lot of countries, they do support that. So the Quattro system actually supports, if my power is on, generate power and send it back to the grid. So how much did I get from the grid during the last 30 days? So I took, I've been doing a few motor tests over the last 30 days. I don't know which days these were, but probably here the 15th of August, because I stayed at 100%. So this looks like I left it plugged in a couple days. And I was just running some motor tests. So for me to run the motor, because I've been changing the liquid cooling setups and some of the fans, I just motored more, and I didn't want to use the batteries. I probably could have, but it's safer for, or not safer, but more consistent to keep the power on. So it also shows here I produced 50 kilowatts and I consumed 63. So you can see that's kind of balanced. 50 that I produced from the sun, 13 from the grid, equals 63, or that's the last 60 days. And if I take a look at this season, so you can see here that in the beginning I was plugged in, and then I unplugged in June. And I pretty much, the yellow you can see picking up as the sun was out. So June, July, August, up here in Canada, we don't have a lot of sun and the angle of the sun. Even it's only really good in the summer, June, July, August. So we really only get a few months of, we'll say, really usable solar. Otherwise, there's just not enough energy coming at it at a head-on for a long period of time to generate a lot. But anyways, I was able to run off grid for June, July, and August, and I'm good. I'm still unplugged right now, so I'm running it off grid. But I'm starting to drag down. You can see here. This is actually the proof of it. My minimums go down quite a bit: 60%, 58%, 51% in September. So really what that's telling me is that if I wanted to go off grid for a significant amount of time and I wanted to be in areas that might be raining or up north, like going to Ireland, going to Iceland or something, I probably just need more batteries. If I was to double up my amp hours, I probably could last more than just 2 days to get to 50% of my battery capacity. So it's kind of interesting. Anyways, I've used basically 100, produced 200, and I consumed 300. So I'm this year I've produced from the sun 2/3 of the energy that I've used on the boat, which is just awesome. So I'm really happy with that. So this tool, I guess as a tool, is really quite useful. It shows me my Quattro right now, what's it doing. This is the other thing too I've added in. I've added a temperature controller. So they have this little device that you put on something. So I put it on the screw on one of the elements in my, not my elements, but one of the phases is the word. One of the phases of my motor controller. I found which one was the hottest, and I put the temperature controller on that, and it's actually able to give me the data 26 degrees here right from that. So as I'm using the motor, it is giving me some stats, and I'm able to record that over time, which is really good. So, so again, this top part here is the dashboard. Like it's kind of almost the same thing that my display on the boat is showing. This historical data here, I find myself using this a fair amount. So I just basically go into, what do I want to look at? And then you just pick, I can look at the last 6 hours, and then it just gives me a breakdown of what's it doing, battery, minimum, max, how much am I consuming, this over the last couple of days. I generally keep it on the last couple of days. So like I said, this was interesting. So right here, I was leaving the Quattro turned on, and you can see I consume basically more than double what I would normally consume with it off. So by leaving it off, I don't consume as much. The only thing is that keep in mind when I turn, why I want the Quattro on is I've got this AC load here. It's really to provide my internet. So my system is updating the internet, and I suppose when I get the camera system installed on it, I'll be able to access the cameras remotely and take a look at the boat from wherever I am. So the second part on this is the advanced, and I'm going to load that up here. And it kind of uses this same drop down to kind of give you scores of everything. And so you can see this has been my battery temperature. These are widgets, is what they call them here in the VRM. So this is the VRM Summary on the when I've added this is my battery temperature. So this is actually coming in from that little square Bluetooth device. The battery history, this is coming from my Smart BVM 712. The VE bus DC voltage and current is coming from my MPPT controller. So this is actually showing when is there, either I'm drawing current or whatever it is. This is the wattage coming in from my solar panels. So my MPPT controller is producing this much energy. And then this is my motor controller temperature. And as I mentioned, I put this in here. See if I can figure out. I think this thing does drill down. Yeah, I didn't really since I put the liquid cooling in, this is really why I really wanted to know what this was. So let me just take a look at this here. I think I can do it this way. Yeah. So you can see this is when I was motoring. And I think I did my motor test of 3,500 watts, and you can see I kept the temperature stayed between 70 and 80 with my liquid cooling in, and I ran that from 11:03 to 11:18 before I cut it off. So I ran it for 15 minutes at 3,500 watts, which is like I was cavitating at max boat speeds. This was no, like it's pointless to run it at that speed because my energy consumption is something like 70 or 80 amps coming out of the batteries, and they're only 100 amp hour batteries, meaning I can only go to about 80. So I can only run it like that for an hour. So running it at 15 for this amount of time, short amount of time, I've actually almost used up a quarter of my battery in 15 minutes. So I just can't do that, and it's pointless. So that's why I kind of just really cruise at 3,500, or sorry, at 3.5 knots, which is somewhere around 750 watts. And at that speed, it's running about, I remember now, 10 amps, 10, 15 amps. So I pretty much can go about 2.5 hours at that rate. So it's a significant difference. What I like about this tool is you can kind of see, if I go back to this date and take a look at it, so you can see, okay, this is exactly when I was running. And then on the corresponding graphs for my MPPT controller, my DC voltage and current, you can kind of take a look at what's happening at each state. So my battery temperatures rose from 20 degrees to 26 degrees, so my batteries got a bit warmer. My solar panel at the time was generating 531 watts. So I was still generating quite a bit. So as I was consuming more than the batteries, or sorry, more than anything was producing, AC, for example, the batteries, or the MPPT controller was also trying to top it up as much as it could. So at the time it was 11 in the morning, so that was 531 watts on the 19th. And then my voltage was 51.194. My DC current was running 0.7 amps at the same time. So it's interesting, you can kind of use these graphs to kind of look at a specific component. And again, if you kind of like put it down to the last couple of days, probably this is more relevant. I unplugged it and I plugged it back in here earlier tonight. So it's missing some data for certain things, but it retains certain data. So for example, the servo keeps track of some specific data points through the NEMA 2000 network, and anything on that network is stored in memory. So when you plug it back in every couple of days, you get the dump of data. But this is coming from a shunt in real time, and this is the battery temperature in real time. So I just need to have my LTE plugged in. But as I was doing an experiment here, looking back on the historical data, I read down on these hours. I just wanted to see what would happen with the Quattro off to know how much the Quattro was consuming. So anyways, this is just sort of the rundown on the VRM, which is I think the Victron Remote Monitoring, that's what it stands for. And it comes as a tool as a part of the servo. It's free. And I find this was kind of like this last piece that has been really helping me understand what's happening, because you know, I was doing temperature tests for the motor, for example, and I was using the gun and I was pointing it at it, and you have to do everything in real time. This gives me a chance to come back and sit and look at data, and I can do it anywhere in the world as long as I have internet. So it caches for a couple of days, and then it gives you kind of even just the basic information. Like I can see here that if I leave my system on, I'll go back to the last 7 days. So if I leave my system on and I have so this is basically it started raining 2.5 days roughly. My batteries can only go down to they're going to be at 50% for 2.5 days of rain. So I might need some ancillary power like the generator to top up or something like that. So with my 100 amp hours of not really doing much because the boat I wasn't using the boat those days. It's not very what do they call that? Like I don't have quite enough to last a significant amount of usage. Like I wasn't on board charging my my laptops or anything, but I was still consuming. So I was consuming, as you can see here, I consumed 1.44 kilowatts, 1.46, 1.78. So I probably was on the boat here, 2.15. Sometimes I go to the boat just to do some little things and make myself a tea or something. So everything is based off of the electricity right now. I don't have any gas or anything on there. So on the, let me see, the 2nd September, I used 2.15 kilowatts, and my solar only produced 1.52. So it's probably because I used that at night, and then it was just overcast. So I've not had good days at all this week. Overcast, it looks like. So I produced some, but just not a pile. Whereas you can see here is the first sunny day I had, and it basically caught it up from 51% to 100%. And I think, like I said, like the benefits of this is you can see, I actually had it at 3 o'clock. So it took all day. So it looks like, 10 o'clock in the morning, it started producing at between 11 and 12. Solar was 0.28, 0.21, 0.1. Between 9 and 10. Between 10 and 11, it was 0.21, then 0.28, 0.35, 0.39, 0.15. It turned it off at 2 o'clock. So basically it finished somewhere between 2 and 3. So it started producing at 10, so it's 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. So over 4 hours, it topped up the battery for 50% with just the solar. So it's system's working well, and I just thought I'd share a little bit of overview of what the VRM system does, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. So it's funny, my battery just died on this camera, so I'll have to do this here on the laptop. But I just want to say thanks for watching. I probably could use some help if they're with the channel. Need some better cam equipment, some better batteries and stuff. So if you like what the videos and you'd like to help out, we have a Patreon page. The links there are in the description. And yeah, just give me a thumbs up if you like the video, you find it useful, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you get notified when my next upload is up. But yeah, thanks, cheers, and we'll see you in the next one. Alright, so this is the area I'm working on. I'm just going to be putting some insulation on this starboard hull, and then I'm going to skin it with some 3/16 ply, and I'm going to need to epoxy the inside of that.